Did you know that an adventuring party consisting of a Victorian gentleman thief, a Old West gunslinger, a elderly French pirate, and a disgraced samurai is in fact historically plausible? And the best part about it is, I'm going to prove it. I saw this scenario circulating around the internet, and as such, I did some research, and it turns out it's from a thread from a guy named David J. PROKOPETZ, who really came up with this idea in 2016, and I thought it was too cool of an idea to not elaborate upon. As such, I'm going to be developing a brand new scenario for these four individuals, and actually try to see whether or not this is plausible for them to meet up. And by plausible, I mean it might or might not happen, but honestly, it's a D&D campaign, so we don't have to be super accurate, but we're going to try to be as historically plausible as possible. Now, to add an extra layer of complexity to this entire scenario, I'm only going to be choosing these four individuals directly, and that's for a few reasons. First of all, this is the image that made the entire scenario famous in the first place, so I have to do respect to their name, but also to make life a little bit more challenging for myself, because to be honest, it's actually way too easy for me to shoehorn in an archetype into this scenario, so I want to make myself a bit more challenged, and also to kind of make you guys entertained a bit more. Now, before I get into details about every single character, I'm going to actually have to figure out where the heck they would meet in the first place. Like, what's a good, plausible location for all four of these individuals to meet? And the answer is California. Specifically, California in the summer of 69! 1869, that is. I'll go into detail as to why 1869 specifically a little bit later, but let me just start off with all the characters associated with this scenario. So, left to right, I'm going to start off with a Victorian gentleman thief. So for this scenario, I'm not choosing a Victorian gentleman coming straight from the British Isles, because I think that's kind of lazy. I'd rather actually choose one coming from the colony of British Columbia, just north of California. Now, you may be asking yourself, why British Columbia of all places? Like, why not Australia, Valparaiso, even the American communities? And that's for various reasons. From the 1850s onwards, British Columbia and San Francisco have had a very close relationship, to the point where thousands upon thousands of Californians came north in order to exploit the gold resources that are found during the Caribou and Fraser gold rushes. This caused a massive population explosion in places like Vancouver Island, Yale, etc. Tens of thousands of Americans showed up to try their luck in order to exploit the resources and kind of sort of kill the natives while they're at it. While there was talks by the Americans to annex up to the 50th parallel, basically where Prince Rupert is in British Columbia, there is individuals like Ned McGowan in the 1850s and early 60s who tried to annex more territory within British Columbia. I mean, during the American Civil War, they tried to annex Vancouver Island, or at least was a rumor, which was very well believed by the entire administration of the colonies. As such, the colony of Vancouver Island, as well as British Columbia, became havens for criminal activity. I mean, seriously, this is a bank robbery notice from 1864, and they went all the way down to California via Portland. The boom and bust economic model of British Columbia, paired off with its really intense social realities of crime and violence, made it the perfect environment for white-collar crime to exist. And oh boy, did it. So with all the historical context out of the way, my personal choice for the historical situation of 1869 will be none other than William Montague Cochrane. Yeah, I'm going to be completely honest, I had no idea who this guy was until I did some further research, and oh boy, is this guy interesting. So, Mr. William Montague Cochrane was a clerk to the magistrate of the Caribou, which basically was the Gold Commission's board, so all the licenses, all the taxes associated with collecting gold dust or weighing stuff, anything like that, it all had to go through that particular office, which he exploited the living hell out of. He basically used 6 months leave in order to cover the fact that he almost embezzled 6,000 American dollars, or the equivalent of 1,200 British pounds, which is a lot of money back then. He supposedly died on the SS City of Boston when it floundered on January 1870 between Liverpool and Nova Scotia. However, I actually don't know what the evidence for that is. I mean, he was supposed to be on that ship, I believe, but whether or not he was actually on it is anybody's guess. Regardless, if he wanted to escape, he had no choice but to get down to California, at least for the first leg, because, well, that's where the railroad was, and honestly, that's where other ships could take him to other places across the world. So, yeah, I actually think California would be the perfect spot for him. So yeah, behold, Mr. William Montague Cochrane. And also, I'm going to be honest, it's absolutely hilarious his last name's Cochrane, because it's a really Scottish name, and you cannot get a more Scottish, Gaelic-looking individual than this guy. Oh my god. I mean, look at this guy. He's so pasty and pale, I don't know how he'd actually survive the sun for 24 hours, let alone in California. Holy 80 SPF wearing a sheesh. So that's 1 down, 3 to go. I believe up next is a Latina gunslinger. I'm not completely certain. It's kind of hard to tell. Regardless, I think I'm going to go for the balancing thing. So 2 guys, 2 girls, equals, I'm just going to say Latina gunfighter. And I prefer that one because the amount of Latino gunfighters that exist throughout history is absurd, particularly in Mexico. ¿Tú tienes problema para mí, mi hermano? No mames, chinga su madre. That being said, I was actually having a really hard time finding female Latina gunslingers. I mean, there's lots of white female gunslingers that have been shown out through history here and there, like Belle Starr and Belcora, Calamity Jane, that sort of thing. But I was really struggling to find Latina gunslinger. It was actually kind of ridiculous. And before you ask, yeah, it does matter, because for the better part of a century, there was systemic violence and racism between Euro-Americans and Latin Americans within this particular region of North America. Think less Little House on the Prairie and more Blood Meridian, and that's basically the type of racialized violence we were dealing with in reality. That's the real history. It's not sanitized. However, with William Montague Cochrane, I have to be a bit more niche than that. I can't go for the pop culture individuals or anything like that. I have to go for individuals who were living through history, not defining it. To make it more impactful, I decided to look into California history in general. So above me, for example, is Tobrosio Vasquez, who is a bandito and a Californio who's disenfranchised by the Norteamericanos. From there, I cross-referenced individuals like him with county feuds, such as the Roach-Belcher feud, and to be honest, I hit gold. And by gold, I mean a depressing amount of violence and pain. This woman right here is Maria Encarnacion Ortega Sanchez, and she was originally married to the land baron Jose Maria Sanchez of Monterrey. Jose Maria Sanchez was an exceptionally wealthy man. He had many children and had several land grants due to his friendship with Jose Castro. One of these lands was Rancho Llano de Tequesquita. Jose was noticed for his wealth and under mysterious circumstances died Christmas Eve of 1852. Left a widow with 5 children, 4 daughters and a single son, she was completely overwhelmed by the aggressive capitalist business interests into her land. Encarnacion Ortega went through hell at this point. Every single few months, she would marry a new man because the one before her got killed. And it would just continue like that. 4 husbands, just dead, one after the other. Between 1853 to 1871, the family kept on losing more and more land as their autonomy was being slowly stripped away from them. The only people that really actually gained anything after this discord are cattle barons such as Henry Miller. This man ended up owning about 44,000 acres of the Sanchez land by 1867. While this cursed hybrid of Abe Lincoln and Jeff Bezos was making millions and millions of dollars, this family was becoming more and more destitute by the year. So after untangling this massive family tree, I was able to find the original 5 names of the original 5 children between Jose M. Sanchez and Madame Encarnacion. And of those names, I have to choose the eldest, Vincinta. One of the reasons why I chose Vincinta was because of this one newspaper article I found where she was trying to divorce an abusive husband, but he was just awful. Yeah, just DM me for comments. It's just a little insane. She had to defend herself, blah, 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 blah. It's a whole thing. At least she found herself a new husband out of the whole ordeal. There you have it. Vincinta Ortega Sanchez. Late 20s badass extraordinaire. If you give her a gun, she definitely knows how to use it, so watch out. I mean, horse girls from ranch families are dangerous enough as it is, but mixing it with guns and Latinas is just playing with fire, man. Sorry about that. I needed to take a break. Okay, let's talk about the pirate. And I'm going to be honest, this one almost stumped the hell out of me until I kind of realized something. There was a literal pirate colony called Barataria Bay on Galveston Island in Texas in the 1810s, founded by Jean Lafitte and his brother Pierre. And did Jean Lafitte have sexual relations with a colored woman during his time period as a pirate in the Caribbean? Yes, he did. Allow me to introduce Catherine Catiche Villard, and she's responsible for having the child, Mary Villard, in 1813. Finding any kind of information whatsoever on her was really difficult, in particular her mom, because this painting isn't actually of her whatsoever. It's really just a portrait of an individual without a name. All this information I found from Shannon Sellen's page, and she actually goes into depth about why it was really okay for wealthy white Louisiana men to intermix with African-American Caribbean women. And it's really fascinating. Please go check her out. So yeah, this one right here could very well have been Mary Villard, the daughter of Catiche Villard and Jean Lafitte, and she wanted to follow in her father's footsteps to become a pirate and a privateer. That sounds pretty freaking cool. And if you think that pirates didn't exist in the Pacific, please think again. I mean, there were Mexican pirates fighting against the Americans in 1870, and on top of that, pirates were doing gun running, scams, you name it, they did it. Think Hudson River pirates in the 1860s in New York as a contemporary example. Last but not least, we have the samurai. And you know what? I already know where the heck this guy is going to be. I'm of course referencing the famous settlers of the Wakamatsu Tea and Silk Farm Colony in Placerville, and you know what's so awesome about it? They're all founded by samurai families from Aizu Wakamatsu. One of the coolest things about the Wakamatsu teen silk farm colony samurais is that they actually brought their weapons with them and often came into conflict with cowboys and gold miners in the area for water. The colony more or less fell apart by 1871, but there was two individuals who stayed on with a Weerkamp family in California, and that is going to be Okeito and Matsunosuke Sakurai. And Matsunosuke is in fact a genuine samurai. His plaque still stands today, and his grave is now in the Pioneer Cemetery, Coloma, California. To sum up overall, Mr. William Montague Cochran, the gentleman thief of the caribou. Senorita Vincenta Ortega Sanchez, la gunslinger of Monterrey. La Madame Marie Villard, the curse of the coasts. And Matsunosuke Sakurai, the samurai of Wakamatsu. And they're all going to meet at the Barbary Coast of San Francisco in 1869.